As progressive as they're trying to be, they would exclude dwarfs from a movie titled Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Alrighty, so Disney is back at it again. And this time it's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Now they've been on a pretty downward spiral in their latest series of remakes and re-releases or reimaginations of their classics. We did a video not too long ago about Lilo and Stitch and there being an issue with a lighter skinned Hawaiian woman playing a Hawaiian character from Lilo and Stitch. Yet Black Tinkerbell, Black Ariel, those were okay. In the recent Peter Pan movie, instead of it being Lost Boys, it was Lost Girls, Boys, They, Thems. Like, there were black twin girls in there. There was an Asian girl. There was just a mixed match of characters. And then Wendy's character, who's supposed to be motherly, is like pro-feminist, girl bossy. I think to the point where she envisions herself being alone instead of having children and whatnot. But for today's topic, we're going to be talking about the new Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And in this clip, you're going to see Pierce Morgan interviewing a dwarf actor who has a bit to say about how they only really casted one dwarf for the whole dwarves. So let's get into that.
Irony is that they profess, these progressives, to want to do this to protect you, right? They protect dwarf actors from being, somehow smeared. But you don't feel that way at all.
Peter Dinklage spoke up about this, and that was my issue. He had in the past no issue cashing checks that were made for dwarf roles like Elf and all of that. Yes, he blew away the barriers when he did his roles that weren't necessarily made for a dwarf. But the Elf role was made for a dwarf. That check cleared just fine. So now that he's gone and done that, the progression of dwarf actors, it just doesn't sit right with me.
No,
that this guy who is exactly what you said, what gave him the voice for all of our community?
Yeah,
why?
I was honest. I think.
Now, if you guys are unfamiliar with what he's referring to, Peter Dinklage, the actor, back in 2022, put out a statement on the filming of this movie. And he says, literally, no offense to anything, but I was sort of taken aback. They were very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White, but we're still telling the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Well, again, it's a remake of a classic. So, yeah, if it's called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, it's going to be still Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Just like Aladdin, just like Lion King, just like all those other ones. Take a step back and look at what you're doing there. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that backward story about seven dwarfs living in a cave together. Have I done nothing to advance the cause for my soapbox? I guess I'm not loud enough. Now again, we're all familiar with what Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs looks like. Here's a photo. And this is actually the new cast that they are implementing for the Seven Dwarfs. So you have one dwarf and then 6 regular sized people, 3 people of color, a female dwarf, and this is the cast that they have for this live action movie. This looks absolutely terrible. Here's another shot of them. What kind of even like dwarf outfit is this? This guy looks like a homeless hipster. I guess these clothes are a little bit more. Maybe this guy's supposed to be like dopey. That dwarf. But what he was referring to with the Latino was Rachel Zegler was the one who was cast for Snow White. And as you can see from the previous photo, there's some resemblance, I guess, in the way that they've put her together and stuff. But this costume, it looks very Halloween store, Party City type of thing. And everything just looks kind of poorly done. But again, to choose only having one dwarf actor and then the rest but still have the movie called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs doesn't make much sense. But I digress. Let's get back to the video because there's some very funny stuff that happens in here.
A complete hypocrite. Let me bring James back in. So
When
James,
Piers Morgan is agreeing with you, I think you need to be concerned. I'll say that for the.
so you're telling a dwarf actor what he should
But I'm
feel,
definitely
having
not.
literally, hang on,
And that's what I
having
want to
literally just lectured me
What I want
about
to say.
speaking for someone in the dwarf community, Warwick Davis. You now accuse a dwarf actor.
I'm not. No, it's not what I said. I said that if you're signing with anyone, you've got to worry.
Right.
What I'd like to say actually is that I kind of mostly agree with what you're saying. And
Now you're, sir, that's just taking a pot shot there.
No,
by saying,
yeah, it
'cause
is
Piers
absolutely
Morgan
taking a
agrees
pot
with me.
shot. But I do agree with what you're saying. I completely agree with your point of view, and I think that's really important. But I can only speak from my experience, and as a gay man, I know that growing up, I witnessed gay people being villains in movies when I was
Seven dwarves aren't villains.
and that
I mean, maybe somebody can leave a comment letting me down below know who he's talking about, because I'm not aware of any villains that were gay or gay people that were presented as villains, at least in any of these movies. But in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the dwarfs aren't villains. They are miners, and to Peter Dinklage's comment about them being cave dwellers, they lived in a house, they just worked in a cave. So I don't know what he was perpetuating there with the stereotype that, dwarves or little people are cave dwellers, but again, that doesn't make much sense.
I think stereotypes are really important to
What stereotype
smash.
do you think
and
they
actually,
represent?
in the universe of Snow White, wouldn't it be better
I don't feel
if dwarfs are...
this isn't a part of this about the stereotype.
Right.
This is about roles that were made for people of my stature that don't have the chance to go out for other roles normally.
But you, James,
So
Barr,
why are we
you want to
taking-
stop Dylan
I am
getting
not,
a role in a Hollywood
Piers, I
film.
am not going to get into an attack on a dwarf.
You don't want a dwarf actor to
No, I
land
do.
a role
I do,
playing
actually.
a dwarf part.
Listen, a
Why?
dwarf can play a dwarf part, but I think it's important to change narratives that don't fit in today's society. And really, it
Which
might
is
be
that
better.
narrative?
It might be better
What's the-
if dwarfs
sir-
just exist
sir,
in
pardon
normal
me.
roles everywhere,
What's-
because they do exist.
What was
in
so
real
bad about
life.
the way dwarves were depicted in Snow White? Have I missed something?
Well, listen, I'm not here to talk about...
That's what I'm kind of wondering as well.
I don't
Tell us.
represent Disney, but I'm just saying I think I see their point of view.
What's their point of view?
I don't represent Disney, but I see their point of view. Again, the seven dwarfs, they all had their own characteristics. They each had their own little funny quirk. And all they again was miners, and they helped her find refuge from the witch who was trying to get her and poison her. So again, I don't know what this guy's going off about, but it gets more interesting.
What was so bad about the depiction of the dwarf?
Why are you
What's the
so
point of view?
upset about a movie changing with the times and moving forward?
Because
to
I think that
2023?
honestly, with
Is
great
this really,
respect,
there is real news we could be discussing.
No, but this is real news if you're a dwarf actor who are now out of work because of virtue signaling idiots.
But you're just
who
using
think that
this-
everything has to be rewritten
You are just
to be
using Dylan
inclusive,
as a cheap
when in
shot.
fact it's not inclusive at all.
No, you're using Dylan as a cheap shot to attack a wokey. That's
I don't
what's
think
happening.
Dylan feels I'm using him as a cheap shot. And what I would say about the wokey thing is this. I have spent the last year listening to people tell me only gay actors should play gay parts. Only Welsh actors, so Michael Sheen, should play Welsh characters. And so on, and so on, and so on.
conversations are nuanced.
But the moment we have dwarf roles, which are the most famous dwarf roles in Hollywood history, then the only people apparently who can't play them are dwarf actors.
weren't dwarf
and I
roles.
see there
It's a cartoon.
stinking
Did you hear that? They weren't real roles, they were drawings. Yet, seems that Disney picks and chooses what they want to do, because when Aladdin was remade, it's not like they changed up Aladdin to be from a Middle Eastern character to a white character or a black character. They stuck with that. With Mulan, they stuck with an Asian woman. With Lilo and Stitch, as I just said, they hired Hawaiian people to play those parts. However, the white characters in the Disney movies, they're fine with changing because we got to change it with the times. Now, this movie has dwarfs literally in the title, and instead of hiring dwarfs, you're hiring regular sized people. There's just so much disconnect in these guys' mentality. And as you saw of that photo of the dwarfs, it's such a DEI photo, like that diversity, having men, women, people of color, one dwarf just for the inclusion. Yet when these actors don't really get many chances because dwarf roles aren't really put into many things, instead of just giving it to them, who'd be able to play the part, fit the description, everything like that, it's not progressive enough.
Here,
Woke hypocrisy.
it has not changed. It was a cartoon. Those weren't actually dwarfs in the movie. They were drawn, okay? So firstly...
They were drawn as dwarfs.
No, that is...
But it's a
literally-
story about dwarves, sir.
Dwarfs.
Well, they
It's a
shouldn't be
story
called that.
about
They should be
dwarves.
called...
They shouldn't be called dwarves.
No, they should be called people with dwarfism.
They shouldn't be called.
What's wrong with being
They shouldn't
called
be called
dwarves?
dwarves.
Nothing, but that's not the...
They should be called people with dwarfism. That's what a dwarf is, a person with dwarfism. This guy is out to lunch.
That's the story.
Dylan,
The story
apparently
is literally
you're not
Snow
allowed to
White
call
and the
yourself...
Seven
Dylan can call
Dwarfs.
himself whatever.
Apparently, Dylan, you're not allowed to call yourself dwarfs, apparently.
I would love to hear, what should I call myself, sir?
I think you should call yourself whatever you feel comfortable with, but as a person...
He calls himself a dwarf.
dwarf.
That's
A
great.
dwarf.
Then. Good
Yeah.
for you. I'm happy.
So now, sir, let me pause that. So it shouldn't be called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It should
Listen,
just be
I
called
do not want to
Snow
get
White.
cancelled
So are you
because I
saying-
think your point of view is more important than mine right now. But what I'm annoyed about is Piers trying to take a cheap shot at someone that believes in society moving forward.
Yeah, I'm actually
because really, if we
I'm
were to
actually
get-
exposing the hypocrisy of the woke mentality of only gay people can play gay parts.
He says society moving forward, yet instead of being inclusive and progressive and allowing dwarfs to play these roles, they're taking them away from dwarfs and saying, listen, these aren't dwarf roles or real dwarfs because they were only drawings, so you shouldn't get the part.
Only trans actors can play trans parts, and so on and so on and so on.
I think we will
right
get
to the
to a
point.
place where
right to the
everyone
point.
can play
Snow
every
White and the
role.
Seven Dwarfs has to be cancelled because you're not allowed to have dwarf.
You should be happy, Piers, because it means that now you can play your dream role of Grumpy.
I would love to play Grumpy. I loved all the dwarves in that movie. They were great. Let me ask
now
you
you're
guys.
being a hypocrite.
Guys,
You'd love
here's-
to play
here's-
Grumpy, but
no,
you're
no,
taking
no,
a role
no.
away from a dwarf
The issue
actor.
at hand.
No, I would play a fully grown Grump quite happily.
By taking away a role from a
Let
dwarf.
me ask you, Dylan, about the Hugh Grant playing an Oompa Loompa, because again, it seems to me we've got a clip of him playing an Oompa Loompa. Let's have a look at this.
So you're the funny little man who's been following me.
So again, instead of hiring a dwarf to play an Oompa Loompa or the Oompa Loompas, they CGI'd him into this character.
Now they use CGI there, Dylan, to effectively make him into an Oompa Loompa dwarf.
So now-
what do you feel about that?
Yes, sir. So now we're not only using CGI and spending extra money and funding for these movies when we could just cast dwarves in that role. Whether it be one dwarf or multiple, that like they have been in the past. Now you're taking at least one role away or multiple roles away for Oompa Loompa characters. That's what they were in the past. And why, again, I go back to my stance on these roles in Hollywood in general are very hard for people of my community to get, besides the elf and the leprechaun and this and that. So why are
Yep.
they being taken from my community? That's my issue here.
Well,
It's
you know
not
why? You know
anything
why,
about the
Dylan?
stereotypes
You know why?
or
Because
anything.
people like James here, they think it's progressive and inclusive.
Nah,
when in
see-
fact it's
Those
regressive.
are not my words.
It's
actually.
regressive
Piers.
and
They
exclusive.
are your words.
Pierce,
Dylan?
Pierce, I will agree with the mindset of it's not right. I don't know. James seems to be in partial agreement with me on the dwarf actors and the roles with that these she. But I don't on the other stuff. I can't speak on that. Obviously, I'm focused fully on the dwarf community really losing roles in these films.
Yeah, I think James
And
started-
with
James
all the SAG
started-
strikes, with all the writer strikes,
Yeah.
and
Well,
the
I,
actor strikes.
I do agree with
it's
you, and I
important-
think all I'm trying to say is that I think it's a nuanced conversation, and there's a few different points of view that are valid. And ultimately, in my experience as a gay man, the reason we're upset about gay people not getting gay roles in movies is because we're not getting straight roles as well. And until we are, it's unfair that those roles are taken away from us. So in that respect,
What's
I
that got to
that-
do with
that-
actors? Because
and
they
that's
can't play.
something-
They can't play
Well,
regular sized
I
parts.
think Peter.
Yeah, like the topic of gay people not being able to play gay roles because they don't even get straight roles, yada yada. Like there's a handful of well-known actors that I can think of, like Neil Patrick Harris, Jodie Foster, um, Elliot Page, formerly Ellen Page. Who else? Jim Parsons from The Big Bang, who played Sheldon. Like, all of those actors are gay actors, and they played straight roles in those shows and movies that they've done. And again, the point of acting is to show that you have the ability to put on the show to make it believable. And if all of these people are able to do that, then that's fine. But a normal sized person playing the role of a dwarf is not just not possible to portray that or to get by on that. Somebody who's straight acting like a gay person, or somebody who's gay acting straight, is much different than a normal sized person acting as a dwarf, or even a dwarf acting as a normal sized person. Like, that doesn't correlate.
Dinklish's original point is that he would like to see more dwarves in films in general, not just playing dwarfs.
That
In
wasn't
general,
what he said.
literally, I should. A person of my stature should be able to go out for the same as a 6'5", 200-pound human. But it's just not that way, and I'm okay with that. In reality, I'm okay with that. It's understandable to me. But when it's these roles that are made for people of my stature,
Yes.
that's where I have the issue.
You know what?
Now, I will link the rest of this interview in the bottom there if you want to watch the last 3 so minutes, but I just thought it was so insane that, as progressive as they're trying to be in Hollywood, especially with all these new rules that you need to have this person and this person and that person and yada yada, that they would exclude dwarfs from a movie titled Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. But anyways, love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.